Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city on the monorail.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 69, where we'll be taking you back to Pleasure Island, our final number here, final part 3, and we're going to be talking about Comedy Warehouse as well as the Adventurers Club. So congaloosh to everybody out there. I know a lot of people are waiting for this. But sitting in with me tonight from the Berg in Florida is Mr. Hal Bowers. How you doing tonight, Hal?
Aloha. I am doing well. Our Tampa Bay Lightning just won their second Stanley Cup in a row.
Yeah.
Well done, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
And Todd, you may have spoke too soon because, of course, there's going to be a part 4 of Pleasure Island because while we're covering the Adventurers Club and the Comedy Warehouse...
What did you find?
Well, we have to eventually talk about the decline and fall and what happened to Adventurers Club after the 90s as a transition to the 2000s. But we'll,
it burned down, nothing happened.
Yeah, we'll put that
all over
for another time.
Okay, all right. We'll move that into the 2024 range.
There we go.
Something like that. Fair enough. All right. With that, also with me, as always, is Mr. Brian P. Miles, coming in from the vicinity of the city of brotherly love.
Greetings and salutations. And, so people understand, we have to explain that a little bit. I'm fine with it being the city of brotherly love. Anybody from the metropolitan Philadelphia area, South Jersey, Delaware, yes, where you're from. Oh, I'm from Philadelphia. That's just, we're from the Philadelphia region. We've learned that Florida is very different. There's Tampa people and there's St. Pete people, and we've been misidentifying how for 7 years now. So, being from Tampa.
I have a plan, though. I have a plan to address that each and every month. We'll be able to identify How's locale in a different fashion. So tonight is the Berg, which is an official nickname of St. Petersburg. So.
Todd, the only reason it even matters to me is I'll get on Twitter, people will say, like, can you give me some recommendations for restaurants or bars in Tampa? And I can't because I'm not from Tampa. I don't know.
Just invite them to St. Pete,
right,
then.
Exactly.
Come on.
St. Pete, guys, if you want to know where to eat or drink in St. Pete, I got you covered. But when it comes to Tampa, I just don't feel like I have that expertise. So
you just go to Burns. If you're in Tampa, go to Burns. Don't go anywhere else.
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
There you go. We ate with a great pizza place with you, too. That was fantastic. So. But, all right, so we will. How's looking at
I'm trying to remember. I went to a gas station with him, an old gas station that was converted to a restaurant.
Very nice. We
had a nice dinner, and then we went to some ice cream dessert bar that specialized in pies, unsurprisingly.
Yes, that's right.
We had a nice dinner, a nice time that night. And then we ate on that beach down there, that like on the side of the road, that like roadhouse that all of a sudden you go to the back of it. It's got a beautiful beach we sat on and had dinner and with the family. It was a lot of fun. There's some gems down there.
It's a lovely place to be from.
Well, we will come down to the Berg soon.
Yes,
as is Philadelphia, I've fed everybody who's come near here. So.
Now, nobody ever introduces me, but I'm okay if you say it's the Boston area. I'm cool with that.
North and New England.
Northeast, New England,
New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's what's
I'm
new.
not far enough north to be down east.
It's a lot better than the old Hampshire.
Yes.
It is.
That's a West Wing reference. When President Bartlett in the West Wing was the governor of New Hampshire before he was president, and there's one flashback episode where he's the governor, and they're walking in to pitch him the new state's tourism slogan.
It's what's new.
New Hampshire. It's what's new.
Thomas Hilton started a fishing village here in 1623, Alan.
All right, and is also sitting in with me, as always, Mr. J.T. Kuzier, coming in from the approximate area of Ohio, somewhere within the boundaries of that state. How you doing tonight, JT?
I am coming to you live from the Buckeye State.
We're here,
Excellent.
former rubber capital of the world.
The
sunny, sandy beaches of Lake Erie. We're here.
You've got it all. Flatland, rubber, and beaches.
Did somebody take over as the rubber capital of the world?
Was it Brazil or Mexico in the late 80s, I believe? The only tires made in Akron now are the actual tires. This is not confirmed. The NASCAR tires are the only tires that are actually made in this. And you know, if you talk to people in the 70s, there was a large black cloud over all of Akron due to all of the rubber production here. So
maybe Fordlandia has become the rubber capital. Maybe Fordlandia's rubber crop finally took hold.
That is a fascinating story. Look up Fordlandia.
That's the Walt Disney Epcot version in Ford's life.
It's the Goodyear version of
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's time for this month's mailbag. JT, lots of stuff coming in. I know you've got a bunch of them here. What do we got this month?
Okay, so first one, we're going to call it 2 for Tuesday here. Joey, I think is how you pronounce this. Joie. I don't want to mispronounce it, but if I did, Joey, I apologize. Joey Mayfield Stewart. First one here. This one's going to include a link in the show notes. Joey wrote, "Hey guys, I have a copy of the book The Magic of Disneyland and Walt Disney World from 1979. He took pictures of every page for us to see. He doesn't have a scanner." So Joey sent us all these images here, and for his efforts, I feel like rewarding and just putting it in the show notes because it came out really nice, and it's every page of this book, which it very much resembles like those we talked about, all the hardbound anniversary books, and that very similar as far as like it's got the first page is all the characters animated, then there's attractions intermixed with animated, and it's Disneyland and Disney World. Looks very similar to some of the books that I've seen in the past. So we will put that in there. Thank you so much, Joey. Now, this is late breaking, hot off the press news from Joey, and I'm hoping you guys didn't see or get this email, or this might be a surprise to some of you. So if you open our Slack chat, episode 69, you can view this right now. This is the actual packaging
and I can't
that
believe
Joey
it.
has. Now, I'll read you the story as you read over the pictures there. He says, on your souvenir episodes, you guys were talking about the Squeaky Mickey, the vinyl from the 1970s. And we made the joke, because Todd kept referring to it, wearing a cotton jumper. Yes. He still has one in the box. And he says the box sits proudly in our collection in our living room, though I've never seen if his arm is squeaky. So there's the packaging.
Try the leg, move the leg.
We need that thing for Toy Story 2 where Jesse's like, he's bitten the box, never been opened.
Now, I love...
It's got a price on there, too. $4.95 at
dated 1978.
It's amazing.
Now, I did like, too, that we were wondering, what does he do? Well, Mickey will, if you squeeze his tummy, he will toot his horn, blow his party favor, and make bubbles.
Same.
Wow. And accessories. Accessories come with it, and no batteries required. A physical effort by Mickey.
I just want to say on the one side of the box how excited that girl looks to have that birthday cake. And I will also say, same girl, same. I love a good birthday cake.
And is it me, the blonde kid? Does he not look like Jason Hervey from played Wayne Arnold on The Wonder Years?
A little bit. Or
Doesn't
Cousin
he look
Oliver
a little bit like
from the Brady Bunch. Yeah.
Brady Bunch.
Well,
I like that there's no batteries required for this.
That's right. AFES, by the way, that's the Army, the exchange.
Oh.
The Army and Air Force
I just got to say to
service.
Joey, it's birthday party, Mickey. If you have birthday party fun with Mickey, we're having a birthday party at Retro Magic in April, and it would be great if this birthday party Mickey could come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because mine is no longer a birthday party. It's just a naked Mickey. He's got he only has I take that back.
After the
does
party,
not have
Mickey is what he is now.
He has a birthday suit, but it's only the.
I'll tell you,
it only has the. I think it's it has the jumper.
Yours
right?
has the jumper.
Yours has the jumper, but it doesn't have the hat or the.
So
I did see one of these for sale a couple years ago at a flea market, but
this, Todd, if Joey agrees to come, your Mickey has to be there. So then what we're going to have here is an unofficial meeting of all the birthday party Mickeys, the most in one room in history.
Squeaky
Mickeys.
If you remember Epcot 35, we had Bring Your Own Figment. So
yeah.
we could get a world's record, a Guinness Book World Records of the most birthday party Mickey Mouses in one location.
If it was 2, that would be
Get
it.
on that right now, Hal. I want the officiant there, to make sure it's official.
So that came, 9:05 p.m. He sent that over. So thank you, Joey.
Under the wire.
That's super fun. We'll link your Magic of Disney book and also the Squeaky Mickey. These photos will be put into the show notes.
JT, do you remember what when it was? How far back?
Which episode?
Yeah,
he stated it was a souvenir episode. So I think that was one of the first 10.
It was like our episode 6 or whatever.
7. Yeah. Souvenirs. The receipt is in the bag, and I'm also looking at some light is shed on the purpose of it in episode 8. We talked about it again. So and it says we just got a little bit Todd's Squeaky Mickey doll. So there it is, episode 7 and 8. If you want to go back.
It's surprising how many episodes have called back to the Squeaky Mickey.
I know, it's a hot item.
Really is.
We'll link those 7 and 8 as well in the show notes if you want to.
We're all coming to Retro Magic and Cotton Jumpers.
Only if my buttons are white. That's the look at that.
That is a requirement.
That's a great image though. Super fun. Okay, next up, moving on. Michael Landis wrote us. He goes, "Hey guys, I've got another question for you. What was the deal with SMTV? That is Space Mountain TV. It was a TV show that ran in the Q area in the 90s. Here's a clip.
This is the Pan-Galactic News Network. Give us 20 billion nanoseconds and we'll give you the galaxy."
I'm Dirk Tachyon. It looks like a good time to check on the galactic weather with our own astro-meteorologist, Wendy Beryllium. Wendy.
Thanks, Dirk. Let's take a look at some temperatures from around the solar system.
And these are on YouTube. We'll link. I don't know if we actually have one of these or if they're from Hal's archive. But I watched this and took diligent notes. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch it, but it had a very 90s MTV / Nickelodeon feel. Lots of quick cuts, lots of black and white color. It included a character named Crazy Larry selling things. It very much fit the New Tomorrowland feel, and it was tied in with the FedEx sponsorship of Space Mountain. It even had archival footage of the moon landing and the walking on the moon, but they took, if Neil Armstrong was walking, let's say, normal pace, they played it at 4 times the speed, so he bounced across the screen really fast. They had weather reports from various planets stating the high was going to be 600 degrees, and there was even full-on alien costume and makeup jobs on here, talking, and there was a FedEx commercial that said, "Your package means the world to us." So, do you guys remember this? Do you recall anything of this or know anything about this other than just seeing it in line?
I do remember this. I feel like this deserves some research.
Sure.
I know that Jerry Rees, the director of Alien Encounter and Cranium Command, worked on the FedEx commercial. And we have some behind the scene photos somewhere that I picked up of that makeup work being done. He very well might have done all of that Space Mountain TV, but it seems very Kevin Rafferty-ish to me, although I'd have to do some research to find out whether he was actually involved or not. But I do believe that was it.
It was tied to the FedEx sponsorship. Though.
Absolutely,
the FedEx sponsorship started in '93. And this was part of the retheme of the post-show area from RCA to FedEx. And it lived throughout the FedEx sponsorship in various forms. But there was a whole loop. Again, because you're on that, you're supposed to keep moving there. You're not intended to see the whole, whatever the loop was, 10 minutes or whatever. But there were 3 different FedEx advertisements spliced in with the phony TV programming you were looking at.
I bet it lasted close to an hour.
You think, really?
I think so, because by time you stood in line back then, it's like they would fill up that upper queue for Space Mountain.
That's right.
And you would just sit there. So you had an opportunity. I can tell you that I think I would have been there when I got the opportunity to see the whole thing through, and it would start over again while you were waiting. There was also one of the parts is played by the guy who played Ortho in Beetlejuice.
Otho.
he was one of the characters on there. So I'm sure there was a good collection of people that were part of the LA improv scene that were actors. But I bet we could, with some diligence, we could probably figure out who everybody was.
I do know that lasted till 2003 when FedEx's sponsorship ended, and then they kept elements of it by taking the narration out so that it didn't reference FedEx anymore. And then they removed that post-show in 2009. Yeah. But there are bits of it that are still in the new post-show now, the speed ramp, and the speed ramp was taken out, right? You have to leg the whole thing. Yeah. You have to leg the whole thing yourself now. But
and of course the SM in SMTV was a play on MTV. Yeah. So it was Space Mountain TV instead of just MTV. And the reason that stuff was sped up is like there were music videos interspersed with that too. So I think that was the first time that they'd used Dick Dale to do music for Inside Space Mountain until he actually wrote or they had him record like special music for Space Mountain in California when they added the speakers to Space Mountain, unless it worked the other way around. I don't know if they did him first and then they put that into the music video for Florida or how that worked out.
And just in case you didn't get the link between the sponsorship and the attraction, FedEx gets things there fast. That's it. Like Space Mountain is fast.
I mean, you positively absolutely have to have it.
Interstellar overnight, yes.
The Beetlejuice guy's name on the show is Ray Cathode.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Next up is Lindsay. Lindsay wrote us. She actually worked in the college program. She was at Disney in 2012, and she was assigned to Cinderella's Royal Table. This is a great story, and you guys know how much I love a good celebrity story at Disney. She says that the night she was supposed to take a cast tour of the Castle Suite, that's the one where it was a Year of a Million Dreams, where you get picked and you'd spend the night up there, and it was a big deal. One family a night. And then, the last I heard of that was it, unless you had a ton of money to go up there. Well, it was a complete coincidence, I guess, because the night she was supposed to take her cast tour, you guessed it, Tom Cruise booked the castle. And he was ready to play some football. No, just kidding. If you listen to last month, we had a great Tom Cruise football story. But so Tom Cruise is the reason she never got to see the Castle Suite. I just can't believe that. Working in Cinderella's Royal Table, you couldn't pop up and take a peek, but it must be under lock and key pretty seriously. Now, Tom Cruise didn't stop there. He ordered stuff directly from the kitchen, and the Cinderella Royal Table staff would bring it up. So I'm assuming it doesn't sound like she took it up there, because it sounds like she was maybe on the phone taking the orders.
She worked at the podium. I think she tells us in there. Downstairs checking people in, but that the people who worked at Cinderella's Royal Table, like the waiters, had to deliver the food up to the Castle Suite for him.
Yeah, and then another great part of this was he took Siri, his daughter, on the merry-go-round after the park closed, which, I mean, if you're Tom Cruise, that's the only time to go on the merry-go-round. But I think that's another Tom Cruise story. And there was always the rumor or the myth that, like, people would say, like, the only people that can stay there are Year of a Million Dreams winner. And there was one time Tom Cruise, I guess, stayed there too. And it confirms it right there.
Well, that's part, but they do I have seen other celebrities share
oh really?
Like Insta stories staying up there. So it's basically a perk now for the uber famous. It's they don't I'm sure you could buy your way in there if the number's high enough, if you're the Sultan of Brunei or something. But yeah, I know I have seen other celebrities who've shared clips of them staying up there.
Wow, that's cool. Well, okay. Well, great story. Thank you for that, Lindsay. And I'm sorry Tom Cruise ruined your party too, just like all the people that wanted to go shopping that night.
Maybe he'll hear this podcast and make it up to her.
Maybe.
Hey, fly her down to show you the Castle Suite.
I just want to hear stories of Tom Cruise ruining people's Walt Disney World vacations from all of our listeners.
These celebrity stories.
Or any celebrity. I would love to hear any stories of any celebrity or famous person ruining your vacation in some way.
Like, because it has to happen. There has to be somebody out there that was like, I was about to get on Splash Mountain. They let Will Smith cut in front of me, and then the ride broke down for a week. And that's
absolutely, there are people out there like that. Like it's happened to all of us.
For sure. So, Lindsay, we appreciate that story, and if you do have a good celebrity story, keep those coming. We love sharing those, love hearing them for sure. All right, next one is Cody, and How, you have some correspondence with Cody, and we'll kind of go into this. He's got a sort of a two-parter here. He really wanted to know, and we did address this in one of our episodes, but it's always good reference. He says he has a question pertaining to Epcot. I can never keep track of which side of Future World is east and which side is west. In my mind, based on how you enter the park, the right side of Spaceship Earth should be east, and the area to the left should be west. Do you know why? It's the exact opposite of that. What's the reason?
Yeah, and this is the actual thing that I talk about all the time on the show that I struggle with. It's so the CommuniCore was named the same way. Like there was CommuniCore East and West, and what it came down to is I was so conditioned as a child, you know, when you went to the Magic Kingdom, you entered from the south, and Fantasyland was in the north, and the orientation of the park on the souvenir map that you got was exactly the same as the way that it was set up, you know, in the real world. Epcot is built upside down. The entrance is in the north, and the back of it, World Showcase, is in the south. But when they give you the park map, it's oriented the same way that it is on the Magic Kingdom. So effectively, Epcot is upside down on your map as it is compared to in the real world. So the directions are named after the actual like compass direction. So Future World West is actually on the right-hand side, and Future World East is on the left-hand side.
As you enter the park, yeah.
Yeah, as you enter the park. So now if you came in through World Showcase,
yeah,
and if they handed you the map upside down, it would make perfect sense to you. But we all come in through, until that entrance was built in the back, we all came in through Future World, and they chose to not make the map kind of orient itself to the actual directions, which they did eventually with the Disney MGM park map, and I think also the Animal Kingdom park map, where it's kind of on a diagonal that actually does match with the way it's set up in the real world. So that's the short story. They made a decision to make it match with the compass points.
And then Cody follows up with saying, which is a question a lot of people ask, and they wonder why it didn't happen. He says, thanks for the response, obviously, but then he says, he wonders why they haven't expanded monorail lines to the studios or to other things. And he does bring up one of the biggest things. I think it's cost. I mean, that's the biggest.
That's the actual answer, is that it's so much cheaper to run buses that... You know, what did we come up with the monorail? I forget how many millions of dollars a mile it is now.
Yeah, they used to say it was like 16 million a mile or something.
Something like that. And to recoup that money over time, to make it make sense, because the monorail can only carry so many people, and then you have to run it, and the buses just make more sense because they can redeploy the buses as necessary. So. You know, if there's a resort that's closed or light attendance, they can send less buses and do less frequent runs. And a monorail has one track, and you just have to keep running that track. So it's not the answer we want to hear, but it's the answer. That's why.
Yeah. And there were preliminary plans to extend the monorail system, you know, from Epcot over to Lake Buena Vista, but it just didn't ever work out.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like it seems like every time they build one of these places or a series of places, there's some kind of cool transportation idea. Of course, we all know that Epcot was going to have a people mover. The shopping village was going to have a people mover. If you remember when they were doing, I always forget the name. What the hell junction there at
Buffalo Junction.
Buffalo Junction. There was going to be a little train that ran between Wilderness Lodge and the shopping area and the new resort, and you know, just that stuff. It all just goes by the wayside because they just find it's easier to just put them on a bus.
Yeah, or now a Skyliner, which is apparently more cost effective than monorails.
So the Skyliner is, and my understanding is that. The impetus behind that partially was that there was an agreement to take X number of buses off the roads with the Department of Transportation, Green Initiative, the whole thing. And they did find out that these, gondola systems are super cheap and efficient. So, and move a ton of people, and they do. So,
yeah, and we wish that was obviously, Cody, the expansion would be cool. It would be neat to see it happen, but I think we're lucky that it's there, because I think if they were building this all now, I don't know if you'd see a monorail built between all the hotels like that. So just wouldn't be cost effective. Then the other one he asks here is his dad's favorite memory of Disney, and one of mine too was sitting up in the front of the monorail with the driver. He was saying, when did that stop? Why doesn't it happen? And I believe it was 2007, 8. There was a crash around that vintage, and that pretty much stopped it from that point on.
Yeah. July 5th of 2009.
2009. So just almost exactly the anniversary. And monorail purple, I think, was the one that crashed. So that's why there is not a purple on the line anymore. And I think, if I recall the Transportation Safety Board's review, the guy who should have been the supervisor left to get dinner, ran out to Wawa or something to get dinner, and that was cited as one of the reasons for the crash.
It was that, and then
we lost the monorail pilot in that, and
quite a few safety checks were bypassed as well. So
yeah,
but. That was definitely you see a lot of the old concept art. There was people in the front, and that was a big deal. But it definitely, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So hop on a Skyliner if you want that front car view nowadays.
I mean, perhaps if the monorails are ever automated, as it's said they are going to do someday, maybe they'll be safe enough to be able to ride in the front again, because it is a super enjoyable experience, and you definitely get that kind of king of the world feeling when you're up front looking out that glass window.
I told you, Dom, I think the first indication of them automating will be the new Polynesian station. If that platform has been raised up, then you can bet that's probably coming, because the platforms are not suited right now for automated doors. So, be interesting. Time will tell.
For sure. Well, thanks, Cody. We appreciate all of that. All right, finally, we're going to hit you up with one here from Tobias, a.k.a. Dr. Chopper. He says, he big thanks for creating the podcast. He just stumbled into it after seeing a retro WDW post shared in a Disney group, and he's getting into it here. So, wanted to share a story with us. He says, as he was exiting the park one day, his dad was taking the last 5 seconds of a Super 8 film. As he was halfway down the street, a figure appeared at the door of the magic shop on Main Street in a red glittering coat and a white glove. Tobias said hello, and he giggled and said hello back, and asked if he wanted to see a few magic tricks, that they needed more than one person to do them. So we walked over and got a 5-minute magic show with a few card tricks and something where I had to hold pieces of a rope with the magician, whose name was Michael. The magician finished, and then he thanked us for his time out of our night, taking time out of our night, and so that we could be the guest to see the tricks that he performed. Before the cast members continued to make sure we made our way out and waiting for the Perry vote at the TTC, I asked if I could get an autograph because he was Michael Jackson. So Tobias thought this was Michael Jackson, which is pretty funny to think. Michael, the magician, laughed and said, well, actually, I am Michael Jason, and the real Michael wouldn't want me giving out his autograph, especially from a place he loves so much. And also a request for a picture was also denied. So Tobias didn't get the picture with Michael Jason or the autograph, it sounds like, and his dad used up all the Super 8 film on the castle, so they didn't get to get the footage of the magic trick or Michael Jason or Michael Jackson. To this day, I'm still on the fence about this, if it was him or not. Many said it was probably a cast member who was impersonating him and dressed up like him to head to a late-night performance in town. But would that be allowed in 1983 Disney with guests still in the park? Either way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to say it wasn't a cast. I mean, a cast member up there interacting with a guest for 5 minutes, like Dick Nunes would fire that guy on the spot dressed up like Michael Jackson, where, like that just wouldn't happen. Like they're.
You think it was a park guest in there just,
I don't think it was a park. I mean, I don't know that a park guest dress. I mean, people did dress like Michael Jackson back then.
That's true. Yeah. The jacket and the.
But they were moving guests out of the park at that point. this guy's doing tricks in the magic shop. I mean, I'm not saying it was Michael Jackson or not, because even Michael Jackson didn't really walk around with one glove on. Like, he did it on stage, but that was not his normal.
You don't see Michael Jordan walking through the Magic Kingdom in a Bulls jersey.
Right, that's right. So, Michael Jackson had that one glittery glove that actually was diamonds. It was actually all diamonds, if I remember the story correctly. It was like a $25,000 glove with all these little diamond studs on it. And he wore it, in the Billie Jean performance at Motown, and that was like kind of his thing, was this one glove. And he would still do it in performances into the 90s. But we didn't walk around the street in one glove, and certainly not the Magic Kingdom. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, so, it's very interesting. And he says at the end, Michael did tell him, you have nice parents. Make sure you listen to them. And Michael Jackson giving out, advice to children too.
I mean, we know Michael Jackson went all the time, so who knows.
I did find it interesting. Now, if you go farther into the future, into the 2000s, like I remember seeing like video camera footage of Michael Jackson walking through stores in like full like makeup, like he'd have a Hollywood makeup artist come and put prosthesis on him so he could go. It is very possible, but so I guess the real question is there a magician out there with the real name Michael Jason that can reach out to us, or do you know a Michael Jason to debunk Michael Jackson actually doing this? Because if we can find the real magician, that would answer this. But Tobias, fun story. We appreciate you writing to us. And good luck in your parents' attic looking for all that film footage, because we'd love to see the 5 seconds of the castle before you met Michael Jason. That would be hilarious. So
I'm going to go with a totally different theory. I'm going to say it was Tito impersonating Michael Jackson to get better treatment.
Could be too.
What's in the office?
Hello.
Hey, Ryan. This is Michael Jackson calling from Wonderland.
You mean Neverland?
This is Tito.
What? Pick up. Hello?
This is Mike Tyson.
Well, thank you, everybody, for that. Lots of good stuff this month. As we said, keep your celebrity stories coming. They're super fun. We appreciate all the normal, quote-unquote, normal questions about Epcot, everything else, and we also appreciate all the additions to our ephemera, to our videos, to anything you might have. Send them our way. Reach out to us, though, via email to end up possibly on the show from the mailbag, podcast@retrowdw.com. Also, reach out to us via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook message. We read it all, we see it all, and there's a good chance it could end up on the show in a future episode.
All right, gentlemen. Well, it's time for this month's main topic. As we said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be going back to Pleasure Island for part 3, namely the Adventures Club and Comedy Warehouse, which I will say I've been to both. And How, I know you're leading this one, and you've done a phenomenal job with the other 2 Pleasure Island episodes, so I can't imagine you not being able to do this one in same fashion. So we left off last time. Pleasure Island was up and running. We went through a lot of the dance clubs. We talked about the entrances and mannequins and the dance floor, and my goodness, we even got into some of the 1990s technology that was running these shows and lights and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which was fantastic. But we really left out these 2 key venues, if you will, because they really became something of their own in a way, and they were kind of not like the other things on Pleasure Island. They were very, very different. So I'm looking forward to hearing the history of this, and I've got my own fun stories that I can tell about one of them as well. I was at both. I've been to both before. So Hal, let's turn over to you. It's still the mid-90s here, right? We're cranking.
That's right. We're going to start tonight at the Comedy Warehouse, which is in the location that is now occupied by the restaurant called STK. Yes,
which is no joke.
It is really called.
But you can still get chicken there.
Yeah, can you get?
I'd like a mignon.
They really
is it supposed to be steak, or is it really STK?
It's steak.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a hippie, edgy steak.
It's hip when you take the vowels out, I suppose.
Right. Okay. They should have just called it food, and then they could have carried everything.
That's Todd is tid, and How is.
That's right. And JT, you don't even exist. There's no vowels. You're Jet. Bryn.
So, from the outside, Comedy Warehouse appeared to be, well, a warehouse. In fact, from one of the walkways approaching the building, the sign was designed to look like dimensional letters of the word comedy, added on top of the already existing lettering that said warehouse. But the most recognizable version of the logo, and what ended up on the signs facing the promenade and on the merchandise, were a pair of wind-up chattering teeth next to the word comedy, set in a thick script typeface, with warehouse set in a mismatched combination of letters with the S hanging precariously at an angle. Boy, if that doesn't say funny, I don't know what does.
Does your script include a mention of the explosion of comedy clubs in the latter half of the 70s and most of the 80s?
No, but please feel free to jump in there.
That kind of became a thing. That stand-up, prior to the latter half of the 70s, the stand-up trade was these old vaudeville type acts in transition. So you get guys like Alan Sherman who did the jokey songs.
Oh, the songs, yeah.
Or you had some guy, a ventriloquist would get up there, and there was always something to the act. George Burns and Gracie Allen, who transitioned from vaudeville to television. That straight man, funny guy delivering the punchlines, the zingers. Husband and wife acts. I mean, all that kind of stuff was the Ed Sullivan era. But, just a man or a woman standing up there at the microphone and telling you jokes for half an hour that were more than Henny Youngman doing one-liners. That really developed more the latter half of the 60s, the 70s. It was kind of avant-garde in the beginning. And then, you got to the point where guys like Lenny Bruce would do like a whole hour just at the microphone with stories and punchlines, and they're longer and more drawn out. But anyway, those nightclubs, started to develop in major cities where it was nothing but comedians. Where comedians used to open for like Frank Sinatra. You'd have like a comedian go on for a half an hour and do his act. In fact, until Sinatra stopped touring in the 90s. He still had a comedian open for him, not an opening musical act. And that was like the Rolling Stones and other people would have comedians open for them. So, it kind of developed where there was this. It was a job, and anybody could try it out. And you went to these clubs, and they put you on, and then you tried to get on the national circuit, and then you tried to get regional TV, and then the Tonight Show started featuring And so the latter half of the 70s and throughout the 80s, there was this explosion. Every city was opening, 24 comedy clubs where they would put a microphone in front of a faux brick wall in a little club that seated 100 or 200 people. And, they'd come in there and feed you drinks, and there'd be, 6, 7, 8 comedians that would go on in a night.
And Brian, what you described for those watching the show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is exactly what you described. She is working her way up through the clubs. She is opening acts for, I forget the gentleman's name, and that's the musician, but she's opening acts for musicians. She's worked her way through the club. It's the exact same thing. So it echoes exactly what went on during that time period.
It did crest, by the 90s. As the 90s went on, more and more of the clubs started to close, and now most cities have a handful, 3 or 4 comedy clubs, and that's it. It's not, but back then there were just a ton of them, so it made perfect sense that Disney would say, well, we got to have one of those,
And we can't forget, too, that like Cinemax and HBO, right?
Stand-up specials,
my God, stand-up specials between, Sam Kinison and everybody.
Go back, and he's persona non grata now, but Bill Cosby himself, Richard Pryor live at the Sunset Strip, Eddie Murphy Raw and Delirious.
Steve Martin's
special, Gary Shandling specials on Showtime, which were amazing. Stephen Wright, if everybody knows Stephen Wright, there was this.
I installed a skylight the other day. The people upstairs are angry.
if you're going the speed of light and you turn your headlights on, do they do anything? It's just, that's Stephen Wright, folks. He's terrific. I saw him live, actually, with my dad about 20 plus years ago at the Keswick Theater. It was terrific. Still doing the same act, but it's still funny.
Yeah.
Those guys all had like hour-long, and Rita Rudner. It wasn't just a male thing. Rita Rudner and Elaine Boozler, and it's all these, I don't think you could get kids today to name 10 comedians like we just did.
That's funny. Even
Right.
Ellen DeGeneres that was how she got
That's right.
her start. She was a really funny stand-up. So then what's fascinating, Brian, is that Disney did not do that at all with their comedy club.
It's a good thing we have you here, Hal, to set us straight.
As we'll talk about. So it is interesting that although comedy clubs were a big trend, the show actually started out as something different and then morphed into more of an improv style show as was made famous by the Second City and other comedy troupes, other than just the straight stand-ups. Because although they did from time to time bring in stand-ups too, so it was kind of a weird, mixed bag of things sometimes. So let's get into that. All right, so entry to the building was on the west end of the plaza stage, overlooking the West End stage, so you could stand outside and listen to music from Frankie and the West End Boys. The queue would snake back and forth outside an odd corrugated metal wall with a row of lights set up to illuminate posters or a bulletin board. Now, I have a vague recollection of there being a bulletin board under the glass there. So if any of your listeners can actually confirm or deny that for me, that would be great, because I can't remember, but it sure looked like there was meant to be something there. As we mentioned in the last Pleasure Island episode, a cash bar cart was situated outside so you could purchase drinks while you were waiting in line. And because the bar overlooked the West End, the drinks were themed around Pleasure Island's clubs. So you had Rage in the Cage, for the Cage, the Fun Meister, Jessica's Secret, which was based on the Jessica Rabbit store, the Superstar, the Armadillo Punch, which was from the Neon Armadillo, and the Frankie's West Ender. So look at that. One of the stage performers actually got a drink named after him.
It was probably his proudest moment in life.
Probably. By the looks of the ingredients list, they were all pretty terrible. But I'm, sure they would get you tipsy. Over time, more permanent outdoor bar was constructed called Laughers. So that, at least the name kind of tied in there better with the idea of a comedy club. People would usually start queuing about 30 to 45 minutes before each showtime. And there were typically about 5 shows performed per night. The theater held 290 guests per show, so the outdoor queue would get pretty packed with people. And after being led inside the building, parties would be directed down one of several hallways to start filling in rows of tall stools facing small bar tops lit with rope lights. And the rows in the room were kind of stacked on top of each other in a way where the audience members had a really clear view over the tops of the heads of the people seated in front of them. So Todd, did you go to the Comedy Warehouse? Was that the one that you remember?
I do. I remember the Adventurers Club more, but I do remember going, I think it was towards the end of it. It had to be like 2003 when I went, when they were doing the whole make fun of Disney shtick later on. So I don't recall but I remember going in and, well, he came in from the right, if I recall, too, and kind of walked across, but yeah.
Yeah. So after being seated, a waiter or waitress would come around and take food and drink orders, which would be delivered to you as the show was going on. And
how was it? Do I recall correctly? It was 2 levels. There was a balcony level, right?
It was multiple levels. So
was it multiple?
It was done like a. Well, I don't know. I would say I won't say that it was done like a theater, because it was very steep, and each seating level was probably about 8 foot. So that way there was like a kind of a wall behind you, and then the people were seated up there, and then another level behind them, and so it was.
So the 3 levels, if we're going on what STK is, it was Irk, Ms, and Bulk.
Yeah,
is that correct? Okay, just check.
So they would come get your drink order for $1.50. You could get a bucket of popcorn. A pretzel would set you back $1.75. They had a specialty drink menu, which was a little limited. They had a banana rama, a banana split, a strawberry hill, and a pina colada. Each of those would cost you Each of those would cost you $5.25, but were also available in a non-alcoholic version for $3.75. Oh. There was also a full liquor bar and beer, but smoking was not permitted in the club, which at that time was one of the few ones where you could not smoke. There's an early piece of concept art that we have where it looks like a repurposed loading dock on the inside. But later on, we have another one where it looks more like what was constructed, but the walls were covered with large props of comedic objects like rubber chickens and chattering teeth, and kind of how the gag factory was set up at the back lot of Disney MGM and Disneyland's Toontown. But in the end, the interior ended up being decorated with a variety of Disney props that did look like they came out of a warehouse.
A mind-numbing amount of Disney props.
Absolutely. And amongst those odds and ends were old parade props, stuffed animals, a large photograph of a Funicello, and a couple of real standouts. There was a sign from Captain Hook's Galley, which was a restaurant that replaced the Chicken of the Sea restaurant inside the pirate ship in Disneyland's Fantasyland, and one of the Follow Me to the Imageworks signs with Figment from Journey into Imagination at Epcot Center. And Christmas lights. Just everything was draped in white Christmas lights. One of the neatest little details were props that were representations of Walt Disney World's theme parks made out of found objects. So there was like a castle for the Magic Kingdom. There was a large golf ball wrapped sort of by rickety Lionel train tracks that was supposed to be Future World, Spaceship Earth.
Okay.
There was also a cardboard Chinese Pai Fang, that thing that sits outside the China Pavilion. They walk through the archway, and a Japanese Goju no To pagoda from World Showcase. And there was even kind of this improvised Miss Tilly on Mount Mayday with backlit letters that said Tycoon Lagoon instead of Typhoon Lagoon. So if you're wondering how these decorations relate to an improvisational comedy club, the answer is they don't. What most visitors to Pleasure Island never knew or don't remember after having too many Bananaramas is that Comedy Warehouse did not open with improv, but with a scripted show named Forbidden Disney. So when this club opened, it was a stage show more along the lines of Hoop Doo Doo Review. It wasn't improv comedy at all, or even stand-up comedy. Forbidden Disney was an unheard of idea for the company to produce, as it dared to do something that no Disney live show ever did before: poke fun at the Disney Corporation, cast members, and guests. It made light of high prices, hot weather, horse poop on Main Street, and corporate-sponsored attractions. It even suggested that guests go and visit SeaWorld.
This is like Universal's Donkey now.
Yeah, it was. And as we go on, there's actually more stuff that, like, it would play so well today compared to back then. Like, back then, this was crazy. Today, like, people would die for this.
Now we just call it social media.
There you go.
The show was written and directed by Tom Shorman, who came out of the 1960s improv scene in Minneapolis. He helped write and direct shows at the Adventurers Club, and also wrote and directed the Anatomical Players show at the Wonders of Life Pavilion at Epcot Center. Later, he would co-write Disney's Mr. Magoo film with fellow Minneapolis Brave New Workshop alum and famed comedy writer Pat Proft.
Was that Leslie Nielsen?
That was right. That was the Leslie Nielsen film. Yeah.
I had forgotten up until this point that they made a Mr. Magoo film, and then when you brought it up, I was like, "Oh yes, that happened."
Yeah, and Pat Proft also wrote the Police Academy movies, so he was very well-known Hollywood comedy writer. Music and lyrics for the musical portions of the show were written by Lynn Hart, with Disney show writers Kevin Rafferty and Rich Proctor providing lyrics for additional songs. Forbidden Disney was over 60 minutes in length in its original form and presented as a show within a show. The audience is told that the real show performers are stuck in line at Spaceship Earth and won't be able to make it to the theater in time.
Was it still popular back then? Like, that's the worst. That might not be the one to pick that they were stuck in line.
I don't know. 1990. I guess it was still long lines. I don't know. So the stagehands decided to perform a show that they did at the Old Disney Bowling Banquet. A pianist plays a melody of Disney songs as the props are set up on stage for the first act. When the piano player plays Small World, one of the stagehands shoots him with a toy pistol.
No jury in the world would convict me.
In the first act, the family prepares to leave to Disney World on their vacation. Each one of the each one of the family gets a solo song. The nerdy dad is excited and sings about how well he has everything planned. I guess, Todd, that's probably much like yourself. Margot, the mom, isn't as excited. She says, all we ever seem to do is walk and eat and eat and eat and eat. The teenage daughter is predictably upset to be spending so much time with her parents. Their car runs out of gas and they're stranded in the middle of the Everglades. Eventually, they are rescued by the fairy godmother, played by a burly gentleman in the full costume straight out of the Cinderella movie. After a few more musical numbers, the fairy godmother transports them to Orlando, and as the curtain opens, a sign reads, "Welcome to Dismal World." The godmother quickly reacts to the letters, which have fallen off of the more familiar "Welcome to Walt Disney World" sign, and she arranges them to go back into the place so it says the right thing. So that got a big laugh, too. Next, the audience is introduced to 3 cast members who perform a really funny song called Super Conscientious Friendly Disney World Employees, to the tune of Mary Poppins' Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And the lyrics are about the ridiculous lengths that cast members go through to do their jobs with a positive attitude. It was written by a longtime Imagineer and show writer Kevin Rafferty, and it was a real standout and never failed to get laughs from the audience.
I was squeezing when a mighty hurricane. Apartment trees were shattered, every single window pane. It scattered 50 tons of dirt with its destructive power. To clean it up, it took me almost all of half an hour. I'm a super conscientious Disney World employee. When I see garbage in the street, I'm such a happy boy. And when the horses make a mess, I scoop it up with joy. Super conscientious Disney World employee.
The family disperses, and the show shifts in tone to a turn-of-the-century melodrama, as the narrator describes how the family attempts to see the entirety of Walt Disney World in a single day. The dad goes off to fulfill his mission to do it all, the mom decides to take it slow and just enjoy herself, and the daughter goes off looking for something that's not boring. Eventually, the mom wanders into Future World and meets Krusty Crouton, the mascot of the Miracle of Croutons Pavilion. Krusty straps her into a wooden rolling chair and takes her into the pavilion, where Jack Wagner has a recorded cameo delivering a warning spiel.
Kindly remember that we do request there be no flash photography during your journey through the wonderful world of croutons. Please remain seated at all times. Place your hands and arms inside the vehicle. Then put your left foot in, put your left foot out, put your left foot in, and shake it all out.
The voice of Disneyland.
The trip through the pavilion has scenes parodying Spaceship Earth, The American Adventure, and Kitchen Cabaret. The scene changes, and a Steven Spielberg-like movie director warns the teenage daughter that a shark is loose in Tycoon Lagoon. And a set of dolphin fins on rollers is dragged across the stage with a sign that reads, "When in Orlando, visit the other place," which is a nod to SeaWorld. The teenage daughter is bored by the attractions at Walt Disney World. She's offered a chance to see animation being drawn and an exhibit about computers. She's not interested at all. She's finally tempted by a sign that says "Keep Out," and she decides to do some urban exploring. How about that? That's completely topical today.
Yeah.
She meets Tron from the movie, which nobody seems to remember. And a black-lit dance number ensues. The mom then appears with a bag of souvenirs that she's just purchased.
I have got goofy sweatshirts, mini t-shirts, Dumbo air conditioner, a Winnie the Pooh garlic press, and look, new Disney products, Chip and Dale jumper cables.
And then we meet 2 small world gals who hate each other. They get into a fight, and eventually they cause the attraction to go 101.
It's a small world, all right. Too small for the both of us. Oh, you want to take this outside? Come on, all right, here, you go. Right now, here we go. All right, here, take this. No!
This ride is temporarily out of service. Completely kaflooey, okay? Don't get out of your ride vehicle if you know it's good for you.
That I would pay to see.
Yeah.
That I would love to see two small world dogs be in fisticuffs with each other.
The narrator once again details the father's exploits in trying to see the park's attractions in one day with the help of a Dapper Dan's-like barbershop quartet. And we catch up with the mother again in World Showcase, where she dreams of being a Disney princess. She meets Snow White, who tells her that being a princess isn't all that it's cracked up to be.
The laundry day. Come once
The Snow White number was quickly dropped due to blowback from Rob Lowe's poorly received Snow White skit at the Oscars. We talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Just an episode or two ago? Disney's lawyers felt like it would look good for Disney to be suing the Oscars producers while they were performing their own parody of Snow White. So they had to cut that number out. But that also inspired a lawyer character to get added to the show who would appear whenever a member of the cast was impersonating a Disney character, and he would kind of shut things down. Yeah. Eventually, the family is reunited. The mother sings a reprise of her vacation song to cheer up the dad, who's distraught for not being able to see everything. The daughter's happy to have gone because she met a boy, Tron, and the fairy godmother reappears and tells the father that he's vacationing incorrectly. And there's this whole song about how you have to relax and not overplan everything, which of course is ridiculous given what you have to do today. The dad learns the error of his ways, and in true Disney fashion, the show ends with a patriotic song about America for no particular reason. And it really does, just like every Bob Yanni production. There's a big
Salute
patriotic
to America, right?
America, like, yeah, just because. During its run, the show changed a few times, including the addition of Christmas-themed songs during the holidays. Also, longtime Disney favorite performer and river rascal Danny Zevit joined the cast for a while as the narrator of that show. So from the best that I can tell, this version of the show lasted for about a year. Although it always got big laughs from audiences, Florida's management was allegedly uncomfortable poking fun at itself, and the show may not have held up to the repeat audiences that were starting to make Pleasure Island a habit. Even when the show switched to the improvisational comedy format, segments of the show were sometimes slotted into the set. So that's probably how you saw bits of it in 2003 time.
Yep, makes sense.
Because they had stopped doing the whole thing, but they'd still every so often pull one out to do a segment of it. The direction for the new show improv format came from Chris Oyen, who was a member of New York's successful Chicago City Limits improv group, before he moved to Orlando to become the Adventurers Club writer and a director in January of 1990. Although the improvisational comedy format wouldn't get national attention until Drew Carey's Whose Line Is It Anyway in 1999, when that was broadcast on ABC. The new Comedy Warehouse show continued to draw audiences all the way up into Pleasure Island's closure in 2008. Although in later years, the improv show would occasionally be supplemented by shows featuring traditional stand-up comics, as Brian was talking about. The cast used several classic improv games in their shows. One of the most memorable aspects of the show was using an onstage telephone to call a second phone located on the right-hand side of the audience section. And the lucky person who picked up the receiver would have a song spontaneously written about them based on information about their lives that they provided to the performer.
I vaguely remember that part too, yeah.
Yes. And it actually happened to me.
Oh, really?
Yes, it did. I think I was there on my birthday, and I ended up sitting next to the phone, even though I knew it was coming, and it was not pretty.
Wow.
Not pretty at all. Another popular bit was Schmepperdy, where the audience would suggest professions, and then the comedians would play a round of a Jeopardy-like game, with the audience giving the answers while the comedians came up with questions true to the nature of their assumed characters. So that was kind of a good bit. The Comedy Warehouse cast has reunited several times. From 2011 to 2015, a Comedy Warehouse holiday special show was performed at a couple of locations in Disney's Hollywood Studios. The group also appeared at the Destination D event in Orlando in 2014. So kind of dead, but like not all lost. Some of the performers became staples of the Walt Disney World Entertainment. Pianist and accompanist Carol Stein still performs at Epcot Center. She plays piano in the UK Pavilion, either inside the Rose and Crown or sometimes in the gazebo out in the back. And she often plays inside the festival. What is that called? The old Millennium Festival building.
Millennium Village, right? Is that it?
Yeah, so
like
whatever they call that building now, it's like she will sometimes play on the stage there during like food and wine festivals and things. Mary Thompson Hunt performed at the Adventures Club, was one of the citizens of Hollywood, and worked with the events department at countless corporate events. June Lockwood is currently a show writer with Walt Disney Imagineering. Joy Anderson performed at the Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. And Mark Daniel is now the host of the web series Inside Disney Parks on abc.com and the Disney Parks YouTube channel. So several alum have managed to do well.
They've hung around, yeah.
They have. JT, since you popped in, did you ever go to Comedy Warehouse?
I did not. No, I was never. But we had one focus when we went to Pleasure Island. It wasn't watching a comedy show. We'll just put it that way. And that was,
Oh, so you were of age.
Oh,
okay.
yeah. We
Just
were,
checking.
I mean, literally 21, 20, 22. So, I mean, we didn't go to sit down and watch comedy. Now I would, but not then.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Brian, did you ever go?
I recall at least once, but I think twice. I remember going. So it's an interesting, as we go through these episodes, it's interesting to think about my own history with Pleasure Island, because my trips back then, I was the commando people I make fun of now. There's a battle plan, and you're there at rope drop, and you're maximizing your time, and there's some nighttime show every night, whether it's Fantasmic or the Magic Kingdom fireworks or whatever. Pleasure Island was like the last thing I wanted to do at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night was, let's go downtown. I always hated downtown Disney. I'm not particularly fond of Disney Springs. I mean, I just find the whole thing like it's sensory overload for me and always too many people. So we didn't spend a lot of time down there. And I remember the only visit to Pleasure Island that I recall in its nightclub, in the over 21 era. We'll talk about when we get to the Adventurers Club, but we did the Comedy Club, I know at least once, and I know we went into the Adventurers Club a couple of times as well to see it. And my recollection is it was a trip I took with a group of friends, because I remember my one friend and his wife being with us, and so it was not like a family trip or anything like that, but that's so. I like the Comedy Club, though. I do remember laughing a lot and just being fascinated by all the props and seeing things from old attractions and things
props,
up there.
To me, as a nerd, that was one of the coolest things, is going in there and just looking at all the stuff.
Yeah, because so people understand, like the walls, there was like chicken wire, right? And behind the chicken wire was all of these, or up above them, like shelves.
Yeah, there were shelves and things
where you couldn't get to it. It was high enough that you couldn't get to it. But there were like, it's like, oh, that's from Journey into Imagination. And there's a Magic Journeys thing, and there's something from Mr. Toad's Wild Rides.
It's almost like MGM Backlot Tour all over.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope it all went back into the warehouse or the archives or something that was done. So, all right. Well, that's Comedy Warehouse. So let's move across the promenade to the second of Pleasure Island's crown jewels, the Adventurers Club. When it opened in 1989, the exterior had a very unassuming design with only a small plaque on the outside wall and the name of the club in metal letters above the door. But with the 1990s redevelopment of Pleasure Island, the club's exterior got a major upgrade, with weathering and texturing added to the building's exterior, Egyptian and Peruvian-styled relics scattered outside, skulls on spears, the skeleton of a parachutist caught on the roof, and more importantly for the club's operation, a revolving door, which helped keep the sound from the West End stage from leaking into the club every time the door opened and closed, ensuring that the club's performers could be heard. And we talked about this the last time, and some big problems still with the new version of Disney Springs is how do you get people to come inside when the outside of your building looks nothing like what's going on inside of the building.
They have figured that out now. You blow bubbles at them or have a hula hoop.
Oh, hula hooper always does it, right?
Finally, this genius.
You mean Jack Lindsay's bar kind? Well, maybe not.
Jock Lindsay.
Jock Lindsay, sorry.
There are some pieces of an airplane on the outside, but things like the Edison, it's like you have no clue.
Yeah, that one's, you really don't know if you're going to eat there or you're going to do something.
Yeah, you can't tell what's going on, ironically enough.
I find that whole stretch is like that. The Edison, what's the speakeasy one that you go underneath or whatever? That one, you don't really know it's there. It's very tough to know.
It is.
Oh, Enzo's Hideaway.
Yeah, it's exceedingly well hidden. So the Adventurers Club itself was loosely patterned after New York City's Explorers Club, which was founded in 1904 as an organization to unite the era's actual adventurers and explorers who were leading scientific expeditions of discovery around the globe. Other influences that are cited as contributing to the Pleasure Island Club's ideation were Tamara, a live theatrical multi-rooms play staged in Elks Hall in Los Angeles in the late 1980s, and Imagineer Joe Rohde's Last Days of the Raj costume house party. And I guess he would have this party in his backyard and people would dress up in sort of adventure costumes, and that just sort of got everybody into a mood and a vibe. Also, Imagineering was enamored with the results of guests mingling with improvised character personalities at shows at Epcot Center's World Showcase. And so they started off looking for similar opportunities with that concept, with any concept actually that they were developing for Disney parks. So they asked SAK theater founder Craig McNair Wilson to come on in as a consultant to try to develop ideas and characters that could potentially be used in new clubs at Pleasure Island. Imagineer Chris Carradine led the design of the exterior and interior of the space, and Rick Rothschild was in charge of the overall direction of the entertainment. Joe Rohde, who was kind of a young art director at that point, served as art director for the club, and he worked very closely with the head writer, show producer, and show director Roger Cox to kind of flesh out what the spirit of the club would be. In the end, Cox would write and direct the club's scripted shows, while Wilson would work with the actors on their skills performing in-character improvisational interactions with the guests. And that's kind of interesting. For an actor, it's like typically, either you're really good at improv or you're really good at like, hey, I read this script a million times and I do this thing over and over again. So, having actors and actresses that could do both of those things well is probably kind of a rare thing. A magic themed bar was originally intended to be the club's next door neighbor. I told the story about how Eisner went to Rosie O'Grady's to the Cheyenne Saloon and said, we ought to have a country and western bar at Pleasure Island. So they nixed the idea of a magic bar, but several of the illusions that were intended for that magic club actually ended up finding a new home in the Adventurers Club. And I think in the end, the creative team created what I think is one of the most interesting, befuddling, immersive, and oddly comfortable locations on all of Disney property. Unlike the rest of Pleasure Island, which was set in the world of, today, the Adventurers Club was specifically set in 1937 during an open house. And they never really addressed how you moved back in time or between the two periods.
Didn't the placard out front say? It had to address something, right?
Actually, so that's the thing. So the plaques all talked about how Pleasure Island, was built, lost, and reclaimed in the 80s. But in this club, it is as if none of that had ever happened. It's like you were going through
a time portal.
Time portal to like Meriwether Adam Pleasure's house, which was then, handed over to become this Explorers Club. So you'd enter from the top floor, kind of go past an entrance podium, often picking up a card detailing the evening's shows and times. And a typical night schedule would kind of go like this. It'd be a radio serial thriller broadcast in the library at 7:30, Fletcher's lecture in the treasure room at 7:50, Fingers taking requests in the library at 8, the new member initiation in the mask room at 8:10. This was prior to the Adventurers Club song being written, so they did kind of a different ceremony. The Balderdash Cup competition in the library at 8:30, Hathaway's lecture in the mask room at 9:10, and the cabaret in the library at 10. So as a first timer to the club, you had absolutely no idea what any of that meant, but it sounded both intriguing and time consuming. So I know the first time I went and I got handed one of these little cards, I was just like, I felt like it's already 9 o'clock. I have missed half of the stuff that is going on here because I went to one of the other clubs first. Guests would enter on the mezzanine, whose walls were filled with unusual artifacts and black and white photos labeled with little filthy descriptions. The objects, which were purported to be from all over the world, were actually largely purchased at the Rolls Bowl swap meet and other like estate sales in the LA area. The photos came from a historic photo library, and Craig McNair Wilson would kind of bang out the descriptive tags for each one of the items on his typewriter as they were being brainstormed by the group. There were overstuffed chairs and small tables that would give patrons kind of quiet places to sit and sip on cocktails purchased at the small upstairs bar. And if you were fortunate, you could sometimes get seating at one of the mezzanine's hexagonal edges and overlook the grand salon. Perhaps by the Victorian-styled bar displaying glassware made from what appeared to be a Jungle Cruise fiberglass zebra, cut in half, with a display case placed in the middle like the meat of a sandwich. If you weren't quite that lucky, there was usually a spot open by one of the vintage radios that were quietly playing period music. But it kind of, I think, set the stage in a very light way for what you were about to experience once you moved downstairs.
And I think for today's folks who maybe haven't seen it, I think maybe Skipper Canteen is the closest thing that you could go to and see that kind of feeling of adventure and silliness, I guess you could say. And artifacts and books and, it's got a very, very similar feel to it in many ways.
Yeah, I think it certainly takes a page from the groundwork that was laid down here.
Yeah.
Although the drink menu started out kind of sedate, offering drinks available at many of the other clubs, the menu eventually expanded to include more in-jokes and references to the club's members. Among the best known of the club's drinks were the Kungaloosh, which was a frozen blend of Captain Morgan spiced rum, blackberry brandy, orange juice, and strawberry daiquiri mix.
That's a lot in one mouthful.
I tell you. That was actually the second Kungaloosh. There was an earlier recipe of the Kungaloosh, which was equally disgusting, that was made with Midori. So that was the better version. There was also the Balder Smash, which was Bacardi Big Apple, Bacardi O, Bacardi Raz, cranberry juice, sour mix, and a splash of Sprite.
Now, how is your, the mixologist here? Were these all just in a big vat and then they just poured it out for you, or did they actually mix it right in front of you?
I believe at this point they were still mixing them live. The sour mix would already be ready.
Sure, yeah.
But you could grab the sour mix and the cranberry juice would be sitting there in a cranberry juice container. It was all as we've gone through with our productions with Disney. It's like the bars that they have are not always particularly well stocked, and these drinks are very evocative of what a typical bar had in the 90s. There was the Hoopla, which was Bacardi coconut vodka, Midori melon liqueur, and pineapple juice. This
is so, like we said a couple episodes ago, one or two, whatever it was, it's so 90s sugary sweet fruit drinks.
Yeah.
It's right up the alley.
Also how a lot of liquor was consumed in the era appropriate to the Adventurers Club. So I mean that was the era that slow gin fizz and the way they drank back then was to mix their alcohol, which was not always of a great particular heritage. The alcohol, you're talking bathtub gin and whatnot, with something with sweet mixers, with things that made it palatable to all folks, and that's where punches and things like that came from.
Yeah. They did offer some non-alcoholic drinks too. You could get Yaku's juice, which was a strawberry daiquiri and pina colada mix put together, and Babylonia's brew, which was pineapple and orange juice with Sprite and a splash of sour mix. So they loved their Sprite and their sour mix. They did at some point too also serve. There were sort of like plastic mugs shaped like the Yaku's. And there's one of a monkey head. And I know at some point I got one that was kind of shaped like a canteen. So there were, it wasn't quite to the level of, Jock Lindsay's and Trader Sam's with really nice collectible tiki mugs, but they had a little bit of that stuff going on. Guests could enter an elevator nestled by the entrance to reach the lower level, but most walked to the far side of the mezzanine and descended via a curving staircase, perhaps stopping for a moment to enjoy the period music playing on a radio. Entering the salon downstairs, the true scale of the club's collection came into view. At the center, atop of a Victorian round sofa, stood a copy of the Artemision bronze, a 5th century statue of either Zeus or Poseidon. Historians don't yet agree who it is. But outfitted for fly fishing with a pole and sort of a baskety backpack. He's kind of seemed to be in all the pictures from the club and all the videos. And I think that set a very clear example for the guests of what the overall tone of the club they just walked into was going to be. So like you said, you definitely saw that combination of like adventure and comedy kind of smashed up right from the beginning.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Guests may also have picked out the samurai armor that was placed over the downstairs bar, wearing a diving helmet and holding a sword with a speared fish. Now, watch out if you sit at one of the elephant-hooved bar stools. The bartender can sometimes slowly lower them as a prank on unsuspecting patrons, which is a gag that is still used today at Trader Sam's on both coasts. So you start out with the bar stool at the full height, and then the bartender can hit a button, and then over the course of like 20 minutes, it drops so slowly that it's almost imperceptible until you finally realize like you're down 5 inches compared to where you started.
That's funny. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, that's a good gag. Perhaps your gaze was stolen by the Mongolian Yakus, a half-yak, half-mongoose, a half-yak, half-moose hybrid that was upholstered instead of stuffed by Merryweather Added Pleasure seamstresses. The Yakus would come to life seemingly randomly during the evening and begin conversing with the crowd. Canonically, he was a cousin to the Country Bear Jamboree's Melvin the Moose. And the audio animatronic Yakus was voiced by the Comedy Warehouse's original show writer and director, Tom Shorman. Eventually, when Roger Cox was replaced by new show director Chris Oyen requested that Imagineering install an off switch on the creature because he would often turn on in the middle of shows that were being performed in the salon and just interrupt things that were going on.
Hey, Babylonians! Yo, Stoneface! Let's get together tonight and do something off the wall!
I think in the original plan, there weren't supposed to be formal shows there, so it was cool to just have it turn on and start talking to people to try to make it a little bit more lively. Another large-scale character was Babylonia. She was a large stone head that sat atop the bathroom hallways. It was essentially a giant puppet. She was manipulated and voiced backstage by one of the improv performers, so it wasn't a audio animatronic per se, but a puppet. And there were turns out there were like a ton of sort of mechanical or just old school physical puppets inside of the club. And perhaps the club's most famous puppet was Colonel Critchlow Sushbench, a mutton-chopped, bespeckled Glee Club master dressed in a 1900s era British Army uniform. With the penning of the Adventurers Club all-purpose theme song by Lynn Hart, the new member induction ceremony was moved from the mask room to the salon, where the Colonel could take charge of leading a fresh batch of newly minted club members in song.
Marching along, we're adventurous, singing the song of adventurous directions. Up, forward, north, east, to west, north, east, to west. An adventurous life is best. Big finish. An adventurous life is best.
Off of the main salon were several specialty rooms, which each had their own mini show. In the mask room, you'd take a seat amongst dozens of masks collected from around the world, and if you looked very closely, you may have noticed that some of the masks' eyes were slowly moving back and forth. At the front of the room were Arnie and Claude, two Greek masks which came to life to talk to the audience and to each other. The masks were electronic puppets puppeteered by performers on the other side of the wall, but they could see the audience with a video camera.
Oh, Isle of tourist stock.
You know, we're just not hanging around with the same class of artifacts we used to.
Sure. Remember when we was in the Louvre?
Oh, heck yeah. We were right next to the Mona Lisa.
Oh, Dan, you should check out her Da Vinci Code. he was a real man.
Yeah, you're telling me, not like that half-wit Brown.
No way, he doesn't hold a candle to some of the real men we've been on by.
Julius Caesar.
Napoleon.
Catherine the Great.
Ivan's over.
Rydom Cowgirl.
In the treasure room, you might hear a lecture about some of the strange objects displayed along the top edge of the room's combination seats and cabinets, which somehow never included a small reproduction of a Jungle Cruise launch with a smoking stack named the Right Guardian. Or if you came at the right time, we're introduced to Beezle the Genie, a floating head that lived inside of a large cabinet on the room's far wall. So a person would walk over to this wooden cabinet, open the doors, and inside was this kind of floating head in a box. And it could go up and down about 3-4 feet in every direction inside of this cabinet. It's a pretty cool effect. That floating head effect, along with Babylonia, Artie and Claude the Colonel, and the sinking ship bottle effect in the library, and a bunch of other props were all built by a company called Techniflex in Venice, California. So not built by Imagineering, but built by a contractor. The largest performance space in the venue was the library. It was about 2 stories tall, and the room was flanked by a large bar on one side, and a stage on the far end away from the entrance. And on that stage was the debris from a large pipe organ, which had crashed through the second floor balcony when the structure unexpectedly gave way. And you can see little pieces of wood hanging down. Killed during the accident was an organist named Finger Zambini, whose spirit still haunts the club. This was more or less a direct ripoff of Irma, the piano-playing ghost at Los Angeles' Magic Castle Club. The idea was that Fingers still performs at the club shows. The organ was positioned in a way that guests would be able to see the keyboard keys as they would move in synchronization of the music. So there was kind of like the idea of this ghostly and invisible keyboard player that would accompany them for live performances. The real organist was positioned off stage with a remote keyboard and could look out of a two-way mirror to keep tabs on the show and the audience, but it worked. It looked really, really good. The library played host to a handful of the club's most well-known shows. The Radiothon, which is a fundraiser to help the club pay its overdue mortgage. The Tales of the Adventurers Club radio broadcast, which spawned the beloved Jinkies cereal commercial.
Jump up the Jinkies! We are!
The Balderdash Cup, which was a friendly competition between club members who could spin the best tale of adventure. When Otis T. Wren would tell his tale of voyaging on a rough sea, the ship in the bottle behind the bar would experience a storm and then eventually sink. So it was a really kind of neat effect. That effect was actually recreated from a similar one made for the Baltimore Power Plant, and it was later recreated again for Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar in California. And it's activated when its patrons order a Shipwreck on the Rocks drink. So if you ever go to Trader Sam's and you order your Shipwreck on the Rocks, know that that's kind of a piece of the Adventurers Club that lives on.
That's one of my favorite drinks there. And it was taken off the Trader Sam's menu for a while. You have to ask for it.
Really?
But it is, yes, it is there now.
Huh.
But you have to ask for it. But yeah, I was very disappointed. But once you tell them, they're like, yeah, we got that. We got you covered.
And Brian, you actually made a reference to this earlier. The last show of the evening was the Hoopla, which is mostly remembered due to the audience participation element. Whenever a performer said Hoopla, the other cast members of the audience were encouraged to immediately answer back by saying...
Screaming Hoopla.
Yeah, Hoopla to them.
That's the one I saw.
Okay. And I suspect for a lot of Adventurers Club guests, it's probably still a hard habit to break that anytime you hear the word hoopla, that you just don't want to go hoopla. There's kind of like a...
Well, I remember my friend Matt for the rest of that trip and for the last 20 years constantly hollering hoopla when we're together. Hoopla, like that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So apologies. I know this is getting long, but there's a lot to talk about in this club. The lore building was a huge part of the club's attraction, and there's not nearly enough time to talk about each one of the club's, kind of actor members in detail. Many of them were performed by multiple actors, and the original intention of the club is that, a single actor might perform as many as 3 different characters during the course of a typical evening. The most, kind of visible, kind of the heavy hitter players of the club membership were, in no particular order, Pamela Perkins, who was the club president, Fletcher Hodges, the club curator, Otis T. Wren, who was the club treasurer and an ichthyotheologist, which is a person who studies fish, Samantha Sterling, who was kind of who was the club's jungle explorer, Emil Bleehall, who was a traveling junior adventurer from Sandusky, Ohio, Hathaway Brown, the club aviator and ladies' man, Graves, the club's butler, French maid. There were actually several French maids, sometimes more than one at a time, that worked there, and Madame Vidalia Aninsky Zarkov, who was the club gypsy. Now, one of my favorite characters from the first years of the club was Marcel, who was just a person wearing a gorilla mask and kind of a white dinner jacket who would walk around the club and like straighten things up or maybe, deliver drinks or something. And in reality, that character was created as a way for performers to move from one side of the club to the other between performances without getting noticed, especially if they needed to change characters or puppeteer, one of the other characters. So they would just go backstage, put on this jacket, put on the mask, and then they could just walk to wherever they needed to walk to without like being accosted. So it was really funny. I think in the end, when they started giving people more sort of permanent roles, they ended up retiring that character. But it was just odd and funny to see like just the guy in a gorilla mask walking around. After a couple of years, the club started to develop a very passionate local following. For theme park fans who always longed to be able to become more of a part of their favorite place, the Adventurers Club definitely scratched that certain itch. Right from the beginning, guests could pay yearly $5 dues to become an official member, and you get a plastic Adventurers Club pin, a free drink coupon, and a copy of the Adventurers Almanac, the club newsletter, in the mail. Members were invited to attend members-only get-togethers, and were encouraged at one point to actually bring artifacts with them to potentially donate to the club. So it became quite a thing. And whether a member or not, guests were treated as if they were part of the club. Graves, the butler, would sometimes hand-deliver written letters to random guests saying that the messages were left for them. And Todd, I think that plays well into a story that you want to tell.
So we were indoctrinated, I think this was 2003, and my brother, my girlfriend at the time is now my wife. We were just about to get married, and my brother's girlfriend, and my brother and his girlfriend were straight up blonde. So all of a sudden, at one point during the show, they picked up on their hair color and started making fun of the entire show and calling them Sven and Inga. And they were visiting from Sweden, and there was this whole thing. So it was hilarious. We were absolutely on the floor laughing so hard, and the joke continued. Well, we actually continued the joke into the holiday season when Christmas came around, and I have a copy here, I had a letter written from the Adventurers Club to Sven and Inga. So I'm going to read it here for you now, gentlemen. This is from the Adventurers Club, Bleehall Winkerton Academy, Exploration House, 189 Hathaway Way in Hobbities, Colamundi, 8J9410. So if you're looking to do that. So Sven and Inga, it is with the utmost pleasure and joy that we write you this correspondence. Your recent holiday to the Adventurers Club in the Central Florida region brought forth a well-needed dose of Nordic frolicking and a laughter to clue our club. Because of the cheerful glee you bestowed upon us, it is my pleasure to inform you have enclosed with its parcels a genuine piece of history direct from our treasure room. It is our gift and a way of saying thank you for your patronage. Cataloged in our collection as number 8765-309, the history of this piece is unknown, however its recorded history is fascinating. The first entry in our journal places this piece in 450 BC, where it was used as a primitive sundial. The original color was thought to be the same color as it is now. Fascinating, isn't it? Moving forward in time, we find it as a symbol of primate fertility used mostly in ways unknown or in ways we do not care to be informed of. In early 1300 AD, the piece was hollowed out and used as an inkwell for the Amish monks penning the now famous Quaker oaths. Finally, in 1936, the Adventurers Club's very own Professor Otis T. Wren discovered its whereabouts in a very obscure northern location known as Mars Halls. The connection between its final discovery place and your current residence in the north make it a wonderful connection. Before I conclude this letter, I'll leave you with a list of individuals from Incan, Mozambican, and Flotatan tribes that cherish this peace during their lives. I need to take a piss, my legs are crossed, IG's affaded, and I will leave the room. I appreciate your continued support and good luck on all of your future endeavors. Keep your fjords in your trousers, and we all hope to see you again at the Adventures Club, Kungaloosh, Fletcher T. Hodges, and Sunny Night.
Well, how about that?
That was accompanied by a wonderful gift. I'll have to find the picture of it. It was this monkey holding up a feathered feathers coming out, and then a ball covered in colored tea leaves. So it was a wonderful treasure piece that we gave to him with, and I don't think my brother got through reading this letter without tears coming down his eyes, laughing so hard. So yes, it was number 8675309. If you caught that one. Even though I wrote that letter, I tried to really play into what the Adventures Club was. My brother and his girlfriend at the time were just absolutely on the floor laughing. So we had a great time.
Well, Brian, while we're on the subject of talking about locals being involved with the Adventurers Club, I know you have a certain perspective to this to share, which I feel I kind of agree with too, but I'm going to let you start, and then we can all kind of weigh in on your thoughts.
The boys have heard this rant before off air. That's what Hal's referring to. But my experience at the Adventurers Club, first, the immersion is great. And the comparison these days to Trader Sam's is apt. So if you've ever been to Trader Sam's and you come in and there are things going on around you all the time as people order different drinks that there's a different routine for, where the cast members have something they call out, there's effects behind the bar and all that gives you a sense of some of what the Adventurers Club was about. And it's a pleasurable experience for people because you go into Trader Sam's and if 5 people order one of those, the same drink, they do the same thing for each of the 5, people that order it. And so you get to see it happen more than once. My experience at the Adventurers Club, which was also 2003, Todd, unless Rob corrects me, I'm almost certain it was 2003, is we wander into this place. I remember asking before, well, what is it? And, you get kind of it's like a Jungle Cruise type themed bar club thing. There's stuff that happens. It's a difficult thing to explain, which is why Hal's taking 2 hours to do it. But, we walked in, and if I remember correctly, we were brought into the library. And it was a little bit like your first day at a new school in the middle of the school year. You go in and there's just all this stuff happening, and I'm surrounded by people who seem to know what's going on. And we're like, what is happening here? There's people hollering stuff out, and and everybody, it's like everybody's getting the joke except for us. Now, there were a few other people that you could clearly see were confused being in there. But we were there long enough to get a drink. I remember it being really crowded. I remember the room itself being packed with people, and you're like finding a little spot to sit, and then sitting at a little tiny bar table and waiting for them to bring you your drink, which took like a long time, and you're watching these things happen. And I did not enjoy it. And I didn't have perspective on why or why not. I went in not knowing what to expect, and hearing it beforehand, like if you were describing it to me now, it seems like a place I would love to go. However, in subsequent years, as I have learned about the Adventurers Club fandom after the fact, and have some friends on Twitter who were regular attendees, people who lived in Orlando and would go like, oh, we were there 3-4 nights a week, and I'm my favorite bartender, and I love this routine. Well, it's like the people who do the spiel in the Haunted Mansion. They ruin it for everybody who's not in on the, who's first time or don't know it by heart or only go to Disney World every 8 years and don't know the routine. Or when you have somebody stepping on all the jokes and hollering, it ruined it. And So the very people who loved it, I think, are partially responsible for the fandom never growing beyond what tiny little bit it was, because they ruined it for everybody else. That's my perspective. After the fact, figuring years later and as we talk through some of these things, realizing, well, that's what I really didn't like about it. I didn't like being someplace where I felt like I wasn't in on the joke or whatever was going on. Because normally the person who's not in on the joke is the butt of the joke. And nobody wants to go someplace for fun where you're the butt of the joke, or where you're the kid sitting at the table by himself in the lunchroom. And that was my Adventurers Club experience.
Now, weren't most of the jokes designed like to be like new? Like if you were there from Iowa on vacation, it was fun for you, right?
It all was, but my recollection is it was a running routine. So although you could walk in at any time, they let you in, it was like you had missed the part of the show that explained what was going on.
Yes.
And so these things were happening and you're like, what the hell is going on here?
That's how it was for me. Like I was 21 at the time at Pleasure Island, where I had the goal of like, I want to see all these things because I've only seen it from the road. And I was like, I want to walk into every club that was here. I walked in there halfway through the evening. I sat on some chair that looked like it was from a thrift store. And I'm like, what's happening? Right. And nobody guided me anywhere. Did you have a guide to take you to the library? Like I just sat down and I'm just watching all this happen.
Don't remember that. I remember there were 4 of us, I think, in that crew. And I said, I'm remembering, some of it runs together, but it was one night, and I just remember leaving there saying I did not enjoy that, and over the years I've kind of played it back in my head as there is this intense fandom for it that I do not or did not understand, and I do understand it now. Because there's a lot of fandoms in the theme park community that I don't kind of get, but I understand. And, over the years of being more and more in this community and making a lot of friends in it, there are things they love and love to do that I'm like, all right, you enjoy yourself. I'll see you afterwards. And
you can almost assimilate it to. It almost became like a Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's a great comparison. It's a fantastic comparison. I also hate
because
the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Because they were practically coming. Yeah, I'm not a fan either. But they practically started coming dressed up as their own characters, right? The people and they, there's nothing more. How big was it? How big was it? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it doesn't even.
It's like watching somebody's favorite comedy with them, and they do the wait, you got to see this part. Here it comes, and then they ruin it for you. It's like you're just. That's what I gathered. I was like, what's happening here?
If there was no routine going on, it would have been a fascinating place. It would still be a fascinating place to go and have a drink while masks had eyes that were moving in this floating head, like while the effects and kind of things were happening, and all those, by the way, have their roots back to Walt's original Tiki Room idea and Club 33 and all the little things that it's all in the Disney lineage, and I'm still sad that they took it away, because I think it could have been reimagined without the live actors as just a really cool place to go and get a drink.
It could have been appetizers and drinks or something,
right.
Like a restaurant.
Yeah, and I think if it stayed more in the improv and not had that predictable path. But then again, you got to, improv's tough, right? Keep that up 24 hours a day.
I just recall walking in there, Brian. I don't know if you did the same. I went to each room and I looked like, oh, I'm sorry, I've interrupted your show. Let me go to the next one. And then I went to the next one. I peeked around the corner and I'm like, like my cutoff T-shirt at like 21, like, whoa, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Going to a funeral parlor that has the right side and the left side, 2 different funerals, and you walk into the wrong one, like, oh, I'm sorry.
Right.
Is this not
for
the
the
right
Johnson party? Yeah.
Like, I didn't pay for this. Am I in the wrong area? Because you guys clearly are into something, and I'm going to go back to the BET club.
Yeah. Like, it was crazy. So it's, and I don't want anybody to listen, I don't take anything away from the people who loved it, the people who immersed themselves in it. I'm just saying you ruined it for me. Thanks.
You very well might have enjoyed it. I might have enjoyed it if I started and ended my whole night there. Like, you could have seen the whole thing.
And that's what these people did. Like,
sure.
these Uber fans, like they were there for the start at 8:00 or whatever, and they were there to the last hoopla.
Well, and I think you're dead on right, because I know the first time that I went, I mean, I think we walked in sometime around 9:00, and you see the card and there's all this stuff that you don't know what it is or who it is or what's going on or what's a mask room, what's a library, how do you get to the library, where you just have all these questions. You go in and sometimes you just sat there and like nothing was going on because there was a show in progress somewhere. So then you're like, well, what's the big deal? It's like, I'm not sure what's happening here. And you're just confused because it's a new experience. You go into the Comedy Warehouse. It's like you sit down at a table. This is something that you've experienced many times in your life. There's an order to it and a cadence that makes sense.
And in Disney, then and now, most places where there is a shtick, there's an orientation room. Now, whether that's the stretching room at the Haunted Mansion or you can probably think of other examples faster than I can, but really, whenever you walk in these themed restaurants, there's always like a pitch, a spiel where somebody's telling you, hey, kind of here's what's going on, or here's the lay of the land. And that wasn't the case there.
That is a very valid point. And you know what? Something like that probably would have been a huge help.
I mean,
for people.
1 minute, the Tower of Terror, the ride is all set by that 1 minute that you spend in the room with fake Rod Serling, telling
and you get it. You just know where you're going, right?
Right. That gives you the story in a minute. Hey, here's what's going on. And a room just like that, where they were taking in 10 or 15 people at a time to then let into the bar, would have really enhanced the place.
That is a fascinating. Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think you're absolutely right.
No, it's too late now.
Well, we can open our own.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go. Oddly enough, somebody did do that in the 1990s. There was a very adventurers club. I mean, I don't want to say it's stolen because it wasn't, but it was basically stolen. A place called the Jekyll and Hyde in New York. Except it was kind of like monster movie themed instead of Adventurers Club, but it was very much cut from the same cloth as Adventurers Club with live performers and dinner and drinks. And I got to go to it one time on a business trip. Lines around the block. It was huge. And it was actually done by a guy that was a stockbroker that was a huge Adventurers Club fan that was like, this would really go over New York City. Let's steal it.
No kidding.
It lasted for a while.
Lasted longer than David Copperfield's restaurant, that's for sure.
Well, he made it disappear.
Yeah. I think it
was an amazing trick. It still hasn't been found.
It probably took me about 3 visits to finally get kind of what was going on there.
Right. Now, as you know, the Disney theme parks and areas, including Pleasure Island, are not intended to be designed for people who have to go 3 or 4 visits to get something. It's most of them, it's one night of their vacation they're spending there. And that's what we talked about in the first 2 Pleasure Island episodes, that there were 2 masters here. There's the vacationer, the conventioner, the people there for a week that might never come back. And then there's this second group, which was really the first time they were catering to them, which are the locals, the cast members, the people who will go to this thing regularly as if they're going to their local mall.
That's true. I think one of the reasons that maybe the club is as loved as it was is really, besides, the funny stuff, there was actually a real spirit to the club that was about inclusion and belonging and, reaching out to people who did get it and kind of trying to pull them in. The club's creed, which was, canonically written by Meriwether Adam Pleasure, says, "We climb the highest mountains just to get a better view. We plumb the deepest oceans because we're daring through and through. We cross the scorching deserts, martini in our hands. We ski the polar ice caps in tuxedos looking grand. We are reckless, brave, and loyal, and valiant to the end. If you come here as a stranger, you will exit as a friend. And that was really what they were going for.
I have a vague recollection of that being recited when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was a thing that they did, but I feel like there was a group-led like Pledge of Allegiance type thing.
Didn't
like
we
that.
do that at D23 too that one time?
That's what we did. Yes, that's what I'm remembering now. Everybody standing up at the D23 event and doing it. That's it.
Brian did not leave.
Maybe we did it in the Adventurers Club too.
You didn't leave as a friend at the Adventurers Club. You left angry.
No, listen, they were friends. They were just friends I would rather meet for dinner somewhere else.
So the Adventurers Club, along with the other clubs on Pleasure Island, closed on September 27th, 2008. It'll be fondly remembered by those who experienced it, and perhaps even more fondly remembered by those who never got the chance to.
It's crazy to me that that there's a lot of stuff like this, that it was open for years where I was going so frequently, and I just never went.
It's got the same following as Horizons, right?
Yeah, reopen it, bring it back, but then when you go back, how often do you actually go? How often did you ride Horizons? Well,
I think the problem with this is exactly if you didn't have it with what Brian said and it was still there today, the problem would only be exacerbated with people, with the vloggers today and all that. It wouldn't be what you're thinking it would be.
Well, that's true of anything that's got this kind of, I don't want to say secret to it, but it's got a certain twist that if you are able to experience it before you go, it kind of ruins it. And there was no YouTube in 2003 that would, where you would watch the videos of it or anything beforehand. So it was, and it may have, I'm sure there was an element to it where they intended it to be a bit disorienting. But that got exacerbated over the years by people who were not disoriented in there, and the impact that had on disoriented people like myself.
Yeah, Pleasure Island to me was I didn't hear much about it because we weren't of age. Saw a little bit of it on Resort TV as you got there. You saw it from wherever, like you weren't allowed to go in there. So it was something you really almost drew us in. Like, oh, what is this? We've seen it all these years. Let's go finally check it out. And then you explore it and this and that. It wasn't like I could watch pictures, videos, all that on the internet before I went there.
Yeah, and today you could do that of Disney Springs, and nobody probably does.
And really all of Pleasure Island is that for me. I regret now not spending time kind of just walking through the places and getting a drink in each one. But like I said, we would go to the parks. We'd be just spent by the end of the day. We were not big drinkers. The last thing I wanted to do was go into this like crazy party zone, which is what it was, and let's extend the evening by 3 more hours, running around in a place that we really don't want to be.
Right. And it's hot and sweaty usually in the summertime.
Yes.
And
Or when we were there, I used to go at low crowd times. The place would be like dead. There, somebody would be playing on the West End stage to like 8 people, and which is a whole other vibe. But it's R.I.P. Pleasure Island.
Yeah. Well, I will close this with the club's motto and official toast. Some days you eat the bear, some days the bear eats you, but always dress for the hunt. Kungaloosh, gentlemen.
There we go. Alrighty. Well, with that, how do you have any new design ideas? Are you doing adventures?
We're gonna
t-shirts.
Actually, we're gonna do. I'm ready to release a couple of Pleasure Island themed shirts into our store, so everybody be on the lookout for that.
Is there anything with test tube shots or anything?
For you, yes.
No, I don't.
There we go. We'll get one. We know why you went, JT.
That's right.
We should fill this in.
For you, I will do like a test track themed shirt, except that it says test tubes, and it's got.
There you go.
That's very clever.
Test tube track.
It's around the same era. I mean, that's they're close. Yeah, test track came out in 99. The test tubes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go. So, all right. Well, if you are interested in helping us out and supporting us as always, you can head over to retrowdw.com/support us. And that's where you can get all of Hal's t-shirt designs and phone cases and all that great stuff, stickers and whatnot. And if you prefer, as well, we always accept monetary donations to the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. You can get that at lbvhistory.org/donate. And this entire show and everything we do is sponsored by everybody out there listening and those that are making donations. So we really appreciate every penny that you send in. It keeps us going. And with that, we are, gentlemen, going back to an attraction next month. I'm excited for this one. It's been one of those ones I've waited for a while, but we are going to the Monster Sound Show. And as well as we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of that. And I absolutely loved the pre-show, one of the best pre-shows I think ever to keep your interest. This was in the era of 27-inch TV suspended over your head by cables. So we'll talk about Dave Letterman's, him and one of the well-known Foley artists. And provided we don't dive in, just like, remember we were going to do Magic Journeys and ImageWorks, and it turned into just Magic Journeys. I'm hoping to do Drew Carey and Sounds Dangerous, but we're going to see where this goes. So JT and I have a lot of digging up and work to do to write this next episode.
If we have it my way, I'm going to say that we can't do an episode only on Drew Carey Sounds Dangerous. That's just...
We could if we interviewed Drew Carey.
Yes, that's the only way.
Right. But I will not remember taping it. It'll be like Eric Idle being asked about the film. It'll be, I did that one afternoon. I read my script.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even remember it.
Right. What's a
did something?
Yeah.
So yes, we are dipping our toes back into the Disney MGM studios.
I can't wait. And although Todd, I think you always have to say it. Monster Sound Show.
That's right. I went a little too deep on it, but I was doing the monster.
Yeah.
So. But we'll set ourselves into complete silence and we'll point at each other. You guys won't be able to see it, but you'll see what we're getting at. And how do you think maybe for next month you could do some Foley artistry for us? Do you think maybe if we all kind of came up with some different sound effects, we could do our own Monster Sound Show? What do you think?
I'll be a regular Jimmy McDonald, sir.
Hang on.
Now Brian's trying.
Easy.
Yeah.
Don't, Brian's... We can all pass out here. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you very much, as always. Look forward to talking to you on episode 70, Monster Sound Show. All right, with that, thanks for listening. We'll be back next month. Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT, and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities. Hoopla!